ultimately, I still am looking at it like, this could be here and this could be here, but because I can't remember where it was, maybe outside of the top 5, maybe 6. I feel like 6 or 7 to like 15, you could talk me into a number of different orders.
Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Kevin Flaherty. I'm here as always with my good friend Ryan Wallace, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. National Signing Day, kicking off the early signing period, hit last week, and we broke down the Kansas and Kansas State classes with help from the staffers from both Kansas and Kansas State. So keep an eye out for those episodes.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, tune in because we got Rob Iannello and Taylor Bratt from the Bratt Cave.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's definitely worth a listen and a watch.
Absolutely. So keep an eye out for those episodes. This week, we will look at re-ranking the top players in the state of Kansas for the class of 2026 with their senior years concluded. You won't want to miss that, and tune in next week when we'll do the same for the top players from KC Mo. As always, if you like what you're hearing, comment below, tell your friends about us, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a review, a 5-star rating, wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. We have our own specific audio channel through KCSN on Apple and Spotify, so you can seek us out there. As always, we appreciate you guys helping us to grow the show and putting us in front of more people like you. It was a big week in Kansas City football with the annual revelation of the Simone Awards, which go to the best players in the Kansas City Metro. Platte County quarterback Rocco Marriott captured the Thomas A. Simone Award as the top player in the metro area after leading the Pirates to their second consecutive undefeated record in state championship. One of his favorite targets, Braden Stevens, won the Otis Taylor Award for the best wide receiver. Kearney quarterback Carter Temple won the Frank Fontana Award, which goes to the best small class player, while teammate Isaac Bieber captured the Bobby Bell Award for the best small class defensive lineman or linebacker. North Kansas City linebacker Kobe Rhymes won the best big class linebacker or lineman, the Buck Buchanan Award, with Baser Linwood's Rod Stahlbaumer capturing the Eric Driscoll Coach of the Year. Lee Summit's Julius Jones won the Nathan Stiles Inspiration Award. And last but not least, certainly for this show, Park Hill's Dante Dixon won the inaugural Andre Maloney Award for the top defensive back. Ryan, this award meant a lot for us. We've talked for years about honoring Andre this way, but also shining a light on a position group that's been terrific in Kansas City through the years. This year, you did so much of the legwork to make this award happen. Full disclosure, I was a Simone Award voter as well this year, and I'm not sure that we could have picked a better first winner of the Andre Maloney Award than Dante Dixon.
Well, and I was at the Simone Awards on Tuesday at Platte County, and Wayne Orr, who we had on the show when we revealed that this was going to be a new part of the Simone ceremony and will live on kind of forever for defensive backs each year, asked me to come up and help give the award, which was a really cool honor. He didn't have to do that. I was blown away just to be up on stage to do that. But before all of that happened, Kevin, to answer your question, it was a really cool moment before the ceremony got started. Had the opportunity to kind of reunite with Coach Callahan and meet Andre's family for the first time to kind of go over how everything was going to go, the process of the show. And in doing so, I had a chance to chat with Andre's mom, and it was really cool, again, to tell her, let me tell you a little bit about this kid that's going to win it today and why you couldn't ask for a better first-time representation of everything that Andre stood for in terms of on the field. Dante Dixon is a kid like Andre that did it on both sides of the ball, highlight making on both sides of the ball, but had carried that like fiery attitude kind of between the hashes, but then off the field, like the most humble kid in the world. I tweeted about how he sent you and I and numerous others a thank you message just out of the blue. We got in our inbox that one day. It was like, did you see what Dante Dixon sent us? Just anybody that covered him, anybody that supported him, anybody that lifted up players like him and other players from around the Metro, he sent out a thank you to. And like, again, you encompass all that into what it means to be kind of an Andre Maloney representative and making it big and everyday blessings, all the things that they talked about at the awards ceremony. Dante Dixon was very, very well deserving to be the first member to kind of carry this torch for years to come. And I think he will honor it. Years from now, he will look back and say, man, I'm really glad I was the first one to win that award.
Yeah, and like you said, we couldn't have picked a better representative, excuse me, for who he was on and off the field, and that was something that was really important to us, that we kind of hit all of those notes with whoever. We want to hit all those notes every year, but especially the first year, and Dante Dixon certainly a terrific winner of that award. This past week was also a huge week for Kansas City football, and the 3 Kansas City area schools went into the Thunderdome of the Missouri State Championships of the Class 4, 5, and 6 levels, and all 3 left standing, with Kearney emerging as the Class 4 champion, Platte County repeating in Class 5, and Lee's Summit finishing off its 10-game winning streak to capture the Class 6 title.
And hey, applause for you. 3 winners this year for Kevin Flaherty, our champion. Platte County, you predicted correctly. Kearney, well, there it is. Kearney, we both got, and obviously Cape, and we talked about that last week, but Kevin nailing the state of Missouri. I mean, Blue Spring South was a massive upset, so I think everybody understands that one. But yeah, I mean, to pitch it back to you, it was kind of rewarding in the sense for Kansas City, because the Kansas schools on the east side didn't get it done, but yet then on the Kansas City Mo side, when you get into the Show Me Bowl, they said, don't worry, Kansas, we'll pick up where you left off, and 4, 5, and 6 all take home trophies. That was awesome.
Yeah, don't tail my picks next year, because I got destroyed the first time we did this. So we need at least a couple years in a row before we figure out if this is, something that I can repeat. But no, super terrific champions at all 3 levels. Obviously, Kearney and Platte County were so special. And as we'll talk about here in a little bit, Ryan, the resilience of that Lee Summit squad kind of felt like a team of destiny a little bit, and earned it against a terrific Nixa team to go ahead and win the title. Talented athlete Preston Hatfield had the game of his life in leading Lee Summit to the title.
Game of the year?
It feels relevant as we get into our Tacos for Life Metro Player of the Week. Tacos for Life has a wide variety of options to choose from in their fresh scratch kitchen and locations in 8 states, including right here in Kansas and Overland Park, with catering and food truck options available as well. For those parents, make sure to dine in for the $1.99 kids meal after 4. And for every taco, rice bowl, salad, quesadilla, or nachos that you enjoy, a meal will be donated to Feed My Starving Children on a meal-for-meal basis. Those meals are then shipped to more than 90 countries, to feeding centers, care points, orphanages, schools, and refugee camps. The Overland Park location has given out more than 736,000 meals over 3 years, while Tacos for Life as a whole has donated right around 43 million meals. It's a great cause, and you can help just by doing what we all know and love, chowing down on some great tacos. Every week, we'll pick a Tacos for Life Metro Player of the Week. And as we teased just a second ago, this week's pick is Lee Summit's Preston Hatfield, who put up absolute video game numbers as Lee Summit upset a previously unbeaten Nixa team 41-37 to capture a state championship. Ryan, Preston probably could have won this thing previously, especially in the playoffs, but it's great to be able to pick him after such a dream performance like that.
Well, and what's crazy is, like, this was just one of, like, several unbelievable performances that he had. Remember, at the beginning of the year, the very first game of the year against Liberty, he goes down to an injury and was out until, I want to say, mid-October. And the game that we were at, for instance, when we saw him play Liberty North, he was unavailable. Peyton was available, his identical twin brother, but not Preston. Preston comes back and was the he was the juice. Like, it was like they already had some gas in the tank, and then it was like they poured, like, nitrous oxide. It was like the old Fast and the Furious. A good cue by producer Nick here, because you'll see what I'm talking about. It was like the old Fast and the Furious, where you hit the nitrous oxide boost thing. That is Preston Hatfield. Kevin, he had games against Lee Summit North where he was setting school records. He had the game in the semifinals against Jackson where he went off. And then he does this against Nixa, almost 500 yards rushing. He was just untouchable. And even when you could touch him, like here, you get a hand on him and he's gone. This was the tackle that, you make the tackle in the end zone. You needed to make the tackle 90 yards the other way. Kevin, he was doing this all year long. I say all year, I mean half the year, and was unbelievably special just throughout. And it's just crazy the type of year that he's had, because we'll talk to him in a little bit. This was his second state championship of the calendar year. Just a tremendous, tremendous athlete. The vision, Kevin, I think is what stands out for me. He's quick. Like he's a fast player. And again, we'll talk to him about that, what he did this last spring. But the vision, I think, it's one thing to be kind of a make you miss guy, but I think he finds creases. So there's a lot of times he doesn't have to make guys miss. I mean, he can just he's already a little undersized, but he can get really small and find the smallest of creases, and he is gone, where he doesn't have to make you miss because you're already behind him. He's a really special player. I'm very curious to see where he ends up at the next level. We'll talk to him about his recruitment a little bit, because it's been probably a little slow, with teams a little hesitant to see kind of how he bounced back from that injury. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, this is a kid with what he did in the postseason, especially. You're looking around at college coaches going, all right, he did what you wanted him to do. He proved his health. He proved how special he can be against the best of the best in the biggest classification. What more do you need to see? Hopefully that phone is ringing, because if it isn't right now, I would expect a very hot holiday season to come.
He just set the school record at Lee Summit for rushing. He had broken his own record previously, or he had set the record previously, broke it in the playoffs, and then just obliterated it on the biggest possible stage.
Right. I mean, like, that's just that says it all. And again, Nick's is a very physical team. A team that had been, rarely tested throughout the year. And here comes Lee Summit. And again, in a way that everybody knew where the ball was going. Everybody knew by the end of that game where the ball, like, who you had to stop. And he was just simply unstoppable. And it wasn't a one-game spinoff. Like I said, he did this against Lee Summit North. He did against Liberty, North Kansas City. You name the game from about mid-October on. He was setting records. He was wearing the target on his back. And no one was able to stop Preston Hatfield.
And here is our Tacos for Life Metro Player of the Week. Preston, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Preston, you wind up setting a Show Me Bowl record with 457 rushing yards, 494 total yards, and you scored 4 touchdowns. Was there any point in that game where you just kind of took a second to look around and say, this is a state title game, and this is going on. This is a little bit different.
Yeah, kind of maybe like in the third quarter or something. At halftime, we were kind of busy on because we were down 7 and stuff, so we were kind of busy getting everything intact and all that. But during the third quarter, I had another big run, and then I was kind of thinking that it was going to be a special game, and hopefully we could come out on the right side of it, and we did. So that was really good.
Preston, not just in that game, but like all the games, it feels like leading up to that game since you returned from injury, especially in the playoffs, your name was called over and over and over again. And I get it. You got to ride the hot hand. But I'm also curious from you, were there ever moments, especially in that state title game, knowing how many carries you'd have over the last several weeks, where you were kind of like, man, do I have any gas left in the tank here? Or when you get to that stage, are you're just running on pure adrenaline at that point because it is the Show Me Bowl for all the marbles?
Yeah, it's kind of like you said, adrenaline. I'm just so into the game. It's really not too much on me. Football is a rough sport in itself. So, but yeah, that's all.
Were you more exhausted after the game than maybe you realized during the game?
Yeah, well, on a couple of the runs, it took me like a pretty good amount of time to catch my breath. But after we got done, actually we celebrated like for a long time. So, but after I got home and in bed, then yeah, my body was really tired. I went straight to sleep. So yeah.
You guys start the year 0-4. You wind up breaking your leg early in the year. Obviously, you don't want that to happen, right? Everybody wants it to be all perfect and fairy tale all the way through. But did it make it a little bit more special that you guys were able to respond to that adversity and that you were able to respond to that adversity, get healthy, come back, and wind up winning the state title?
Yeah, I think it does make it more special. I think it actually probably did help us. I think if we were all healthy, then we wouldn't have changed our offense like we did, and I don't think we would have got as far, maybe, especially losing our quarterback week 3 too. So, but yeah, it makes it more special because when everything's like easy and stuff like that, sometimes you don't feel as good about it, like like how in blowouts, like you don't feel as good about it that in like, but it's like a close game, then you'll feel better about like winning and stuff. So I think it makes it special that we did have that adversity, and it just kind of like it kind of taught us all to like not take anything for granted, and just like play like it's your last game because it could be at any point. So yeah.
Preston, Kevin and I were out at the Liberty North game. You guys fell to 0-4. Was there ever a moment kind of maybe after that game where maybe some of the seniors, you, Peyton, Karsten, had to maybe talk to guys about keeping their head up, or was that never really an issue with this team because they knew, hey, once we get back to full strength, we can go on a run?
Oh yeah, when we're 0-2, guys were getting down. And the leaders on our team had to like kind of tell everybody that like once we get healthy and once we get everything rolling, then we'll be good. And then our coaches kept preaching that too. And then after we fell to 0-4, we had scored like the most points we had like all year, and so we knew it was going to be a good thing. And it was just like our first game doing that, so we still had to like fix some things, clean some things up, and then we would get rolling. And our schedule did get easier, so that was good for us, and I think it prepared us for the harder games in the playoffs. So
What did it mean to be able to share all of this with your twin brother, Peyton?
it was like really special. We've been playing together all of our lives, and senior year of high school, we'll probably go to the same college anyways, but senior year in high school football is different than everything else, and it was special just to be able to finally get back on the field with him and my other teammates and make a run at it like we did.
I also saw a message on Twitter from or a post from Carson Feeney's dad talking about how you three have been playing sports since you were tiny. I think he talked about out at softball fields playing in the dirt when your older sisters were playing softball. So that's pretty special to not only do it with your brother, but with a good friend, longtime friend like Karsten. I wanted to ask you, though, speaking of Karsten, he was one of the members of a 4x1 team that you guys set a state record earlier this spring. So state champs in the spring, and then you come back and add another ring in the fall. Did you see this kind of calendar year coming like this time last year?
This time last year, nah, I didn't. This was like actually me and my brother's first year of running track, or last year was. And but yeah, that was really cool. After we won the 4x1, we all said that like, because like, it was like one of the best feelings ever. And we all said that if we could do that in football, it'd just be even better, because that was like all of our favorite sports, and we got it done. So that was really cool.
Well, Preston, you talked about maybe going to the same school as Peyton. I'm sure a lot of people watch that state title game and are wondering what's going on with Preston Hatfield in recruiting. I mean, do you have any sort of update, like schools that you're looking at, or anything like that for where you may be spending the next 4 years?
Yeah. I've kind of been playing the waiting game to get like my senior year all the way through, and just try to see if any other coaches and stuff will take a shot. So not really anything like that, but for sure I'm gonna have to make a decision soon because it's getting time. So we'll see what happens.
Do you have any idea, though, maybe of some schools that have been reaching out maybe more than others, some individual coaches, or again schools that maybe have been showing a little bit more love lately than others?
Yeah, Coach Bell, not really just lately. He's always seen the vision with me and my brother. We seen him at a camp one time, and ever since he's really kept in really good contact. And he's a really cool coach, and I really respect him a lot.
Well, good deal, Preston. As our player of the week, we'll be sending you and all of our future Tacos for Life Metro player of the week picks a gift card to enjoy the food at Tacos for Life.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast. You can follow along with us on Twitter/X at verbalcommit_KC for clips from the show, conversations about local players, and even the odd highlight. Speaking of highlights, Ryan, the highlight of our year is getting to get out on the road and watch these players play. And I bring that up because we're about to list our top 10 prospects in the state of Kansas. And between the two of us, I think every player that we ranked, we were actually able to see in person.
Yeah, this was, we say it every year, like this is as important for us. We can watch huddle tape and, until we're blue in the face, but being able to get out and seeing these kids in as many different capacities as we can, whether it be fall Friday nights for their teams under the lights, pads on, whether it be combines, camps, the more opportunities that we can see the best of the best from around the state, the better we're going to feel when we start putting out these rankings, not only throughout the year, but certainly the ones that we're about to do, the final installment for each class. And so for this class, 2026.
First off, let's look at our previous rankings from the summer before the season. We had J.J. Dunnigan of Manhattan at number 1, followed by Ian Premer of Great Bend, Maxwell Robinson from Derby, Hunter Higgins, Mays South at number 4, number 5, Braden Wilmus of Lawrence Free State, Mill Valley offensive guard LaMarcus Barber. We were higher on him earlier than pretty much everybody else, and I think that will hold true on later rankings. A little bit of a teaser. Number 7, Josh Galbraith, linebacker from Lawrence. Number 8, Caden Snyder of Salina Central. Number 9, Tyron Parker of Shawnee Heights. And number 10, Wichita Northwest quarterback Jalen Mason. Now that we're through the ones that we had before the season started, Ryan, do you want to unveil your top 10? Because the way that we did both of these is basically you picked a top 10, I picked a top 10. We combined them together to get our consensus top 10. There were a couple spots where we had a debate where maybe two guys were tied, but generally speaking, we both approached this totally individually and did our own rankings first.
I was going to say, that's pretty much how we've done it in the past.
Yeah.
I think the difference this year, why we felt like it was maybe a little bit more important to do it this way this year, was because, again, full transparency here, Kevin, this was a lot harder class for us to identify. We were talking about this earlier in the week. Last year's class, even the 2024 and 2023 class, with like going all the way back to, when Avery Johnson was a senior, that felt more cut and dry. We had seen those guys a lot more. We were kind of nitpicking, like, well, who would you put at maybe 8, 9, and 10, right? This year, because there were so many guys that were from out west, you and I are both here in Kansas City, we might have only seen them once. Or, you think about the story we tell all the time about Caden Snyder. Up until you saw him in the playoffs this year, our only other chance really seeing him in a padded element was at K-State's camp, and he was sick. He was down like 60 pounds or whatever. So it made this year a little bit more challenging. There were some guys that we didn't get to see until like late. And even then, we might have only seen them once or twice. So I think it was important for you and I to say, look, let's divide. Let's not share what we individually feel, and then we can compile, from there. So without further ado, all that being said, this, Kevin, is where I landed on my top 10. A little bit of a flip at the top. I went with Ian Premer over J.J. Dunnigan at the 1 spot. For me, I think that was more about what Ian did than what J.J. didn't do. I just feel like Ian had a tremendous year. We loved seeing the physicality from him as a member of that secondary and on defense. You got to see his ball skills on defense with numerous interceptions. Again, the physicality blew me away, and we already knew he was a really good route runner, ball skills. Everything was coming together, and his body just continues to bloom so much bigger than when we'd seen him in the past. So he gets my nod for the 1 spot. I'm really high on LaMarcus Barber, and I'm also, again, kind of an ongoing theme here. I'm giving it up to Caden Snyder because I was much lower on him than even you were. We were both fairly low, as you saw in that last graphic. I'm bumping him all the way up to 4. I thought his senior tape was terrific. Still some things that I think I'd like to see him improve on, but man, that's me being nitpicky here because he was really, really solid. He's still really agile. I think he could be a tackle or a guard at KU. And really, that's the only reason I kind of left LaMarcus ahead of him was because, again, LaMarcus is what he is, and I feel confident in what that's going to be, and that's a very strong offensive guard in Manhattan. With Caden, it could go either way. There might be a little bit more of a transition for him, so that's why I went with LaMarcus over Caden. I kept Braden Wilmus at 5. I thought he was pretty steady and consistent. Hunter Higgins, for me, I think he was in that 5 or 6 range all along, so, kind of left him there. Galbraith for me, Kevin, was interesting because there was a thought that I might jump him ahead of Hunter Higgins, but what I ended up landing on between Hunter and Josh Galbraith was, look, Josh is going to have to make a little bit more of a transition on where he is as a linebacker. I feel like there's going to be a little bit more of a playbook curve there for him. Not that he can't, do that, but with Hunter, I think he knows what he is. It's going to be a defensive end, even if he's got to work on some pass rush things or what have you. Like, there's a role that I think he can carve out a little bit quicker, a little bit easier than maybe a Josh Galbraith, even if the ceiling might be higher for Galbraith. At 8, I went with Lawson McGraw, and look, I'll be honest, not wearing my K-State hat here, I could have had him higher. The problem is he's going to be playing tight end, at least for now, when he gets to K-State. I'm not as high on him on offense as I am with him on defense. I think he can be a good tight end. I think he could be a really good special defensive player as an outside linebacker, stand-up defensive end. But again, good enough to get him in this top 10. Max Robinson, a guy that we can talk about maybe a little bit later. But the film for me, just to be cut short and sweet, was still pretty solid. He deserves to be in the top 10. I don't care what school he's going to. He's a good player. And then I rounded mine out with Braden Maivella. And Tyron Parker was in there for me. I went back and looked at some Nate Sims pre-injury. For me, Braden Maivella, I went against the grain because I'm a guy that I like to lean on guys that aren't having to make too much of a positional transition that Braden's going to have to do going from quarterback to receiver. But I also feel like with Braden Maivella, based on what we saw as a senior, based on what I saw in person, if you give him the chance to be a wide receiver, if he had come into this year on 2 or 3 years as a wide receiver, and they had a quarterback for the last 2 or 3 years at Mays where it allowed Braden to be at that position more frequently, I think he would already be the player that Tyron Parker is, if not better. So I'm giving the edge to Braden Maivella going out to Old Dominion, and I think for me that was a tough one. But I gave him the edge because, again, I think with some time, I think the ceiling is really, really high on him. And honestly, I think the floor might be even higher than people think.
Yeah, I liked your list. Obviously, we're going to have some differences, and we did have some differences. The one guy that we had different, Ryan, if my rankings come up, is you had Braden Maivella in there, and I had Tyron Parker in there. That was the only person that we had different. We had some guys in different orders, but that was the lone difference in terms of the guys that we put on there. We had the other 9 were the same guys. And so starting off at the top, I thought you put it really well with Ian Premer and JJ Dunnigan at the top of that list, where it wasn't anything that JJ Dunnigan did wrong. Because when I went and saw JJ Dunnigan in person, JJ Dunnigan is bigger, stronger, and faster, I think, than he was a year ago when he was, our number 1 guy. But when we saw Ian Premer against Hayes, we had seen Ian before in camp settings. We had seen him before in different places. The physicality that he developed and the toughness that he had running through tackles, in addition to all the things we knew he had, right? The agility, the ability to use his body to shield guys off and have great body control, the football IQ, all of those things we knew about. We didn't know, hey, this guy is an absolute freight train at tight end as well. And so, kudos to Ian. He was too good to not have in that number 1 spot. You had LaMarcus Barber as your number 1 lineman, and you had Caden Snyder number 2. I went the other way. I went with Caden Snyder at number 3. I think a big part of that is when you look at Caden Snyder's agility and the movement skills and the length that he has, all of those things in combination. We talked about him developing the physicality that we wanted to see from him this offseason. I thought the ability for Caden to stick at tackle made him a more valuable prospect than LaMarcus Barber. And I really like LaMarcus Barber. Ryan, you can attest, when I saw him this summer, I came back and I said, this guy is way too low everywhere.
Yes.
Every I saw him and was so impressed. He looked like a different guy than he was a year ago. Hunter Higgins I had at 4, and I think you saw him able to win more this year with quickness than he was in the past, which was something that, I really looked at. Because I think before, when we saw him, we thought big, great frame, right? He's gonna add weight and strength and be a good, strong side defensive end. But there wasn't maybe the juice. And of course, some of that was injury related and whatever else. When I saw Hunter in person, I thought he had more of that first step. I thought he had more of the agility that you wanted to see. And with the way that he had almost kind of streamlined his frame a little bit, he's a guy that I think is going to explode in Kansas's weight room. And I think he has a chance to be a really special, potentially an all Big 12 type player. Josh Galbraith, we've talked about a lot on the show. I'm not sure there's a better athlete playing linebacker in the country in this high school class. And if there is, Josh is still in that discussion when you look at strictly run, jump, speed. But the other thing that we noticed this year, Ryan, he was more physical. And he was a guy that didn't have any problem dropping his hips and taking on a ball carrier, dropping a big running back like Max Piva when we saw him, and the way that he was able to do that. You did mention he's probably going to shift to a little bit of a different role at KU. I don't see him necessarily being a middle linebacker type there. And so it's going to be a little bit more chase and cover probably. But at the same time, I think the athletic gifts there are too much to ignore. We talked about Barber. He's what you want in an interior lineman and has a chance to be really special at Kansas State with his strength, with his aggression and all of those things. And I dropped Braden Wilmus a little bit from where we had him earlier before the season started. Braden's still got that great long frame. He's going to be an offensive tackle. I think there's a chance he's pretty darn good at it. And he looked good when I saw him. It was just quite literally, I liked Caden Snyder and LaMarcus Barber a little more. And so I think when you look at that, Braden Wilmus has a chance to go to Clemson, and, he's going to need to develop and take some time there. But I think he can be a really good college football player. We both had Lawson McGraw at number 8. I think that's a good spot for him. Like you said, I considered him probably up a spot or two. I considered him down a spot or two and felt like 8 was kind of the sweet spot with him. Also, like you said, I like him more on defense than I do on offense, but that's versatility that I think enhances him as a prospect versus taking anything away from him. Tyron Parker being the one guy that I had different from you. Look, Kansas fans remember a guy from just 2 years ago. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. In Lawrence Arnold, and he was a 6'3" guy, had this big, really good-looking body. When you played against in Oklahoma or Texas, he didn't look out of place as an outside receiver. And I think he was a little bit underrated as an athlete. Tyron Parker's not underrated as an athlete. He's just a really good athlete. He has more juice to him. And I think when you see the body control, the way he can flip his hips, the quick feet that he has at that receiver position, I think he actually has another level to his ceiling than what we saw with Lawrence Arnold. And Lawrence Arnold had a pretty good Kansas career. And I think when you look at Tyron, his ability to get over the top of defensive backs with his speed, his ability to cut and make transitions, his ceiling is a ways away from his floor. And we've talked about that. And generally speaking, we like guys that we are really confident that they're going to hit their ceiling. Tyron, it's going to take him some work, but I bet on that high ceiling. I think in this specific case, Max Robinson, you described perfectly. Look, he's got great tape. He's a really good lineman. If you were starting a high school football season this year and saying, hey, pick lineman from the state of Kansas, he's going to be one of the first guys to take it. The issue is that he's not quite 6'3", and that limits what he can be at the next level. He's not going to be an offensive tackle, which is where he played at Derby. I think he can be a pretty good guard, but he's also somebody that needs to probably add 30 or 40 more pounds to be that guy at a major level in college. And so I think when you round out the top 10, that's the way that I had it. I think in the next segment, Ryan, we should go ahead and look at the KCSN consensus rankings and how they stack up with the recruiting sites when we get back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
This is the Verbal Commitment Podcast on KCSN. Last segment, we looked at our individual rankings for the state of Kansas in the class of 2026. Here's what the KCSN consensus rankings look like.
I think that's got a good ring to it, doesn't it?
I like it too. I think we should stick with this thing. And that was a Ryan Wallace special for those who want, a peek behind the curtain. But Ian Premer and Dunnigan 1-2, not a surprise there. Caden Snyder gets the #3 spot, followed immediately by LaMarcus Barber. Hunter Higgins winds up at 5, followed by Josh Galbraith at 6. Braden Wilmus is at #7 with Lawson McGraw at #8. Max Robinson from Derby is at #9, and at #10 is Tyron Parker. Real quick, Ryan, I did want to talk about Braden Maivella because you did have him on there. I didn't have Maivella on there. Maivella was my hardest omission by far. And he was a guy that I had in the rankings, that I had out of the rankings. I mean, he was a guy that I really struggled to place there because I think at the end of the day, you're talking about a guy who could wind up being 6'3", 6'4", 215 to 220 with all the requisite athleticism to be an outstanding outside receiver.
Well, and again, kind of going back to what you said in the last segment about why you had Tyron Parker in your top 10, that was kind of the reason I talked myself out of Tyron Parker in favor of Braden Maivella. I think Braden Maivella will have maybe a larger transition in terms of, again, he's been working as a receiver in the offseason. He's not completely new to it. But obviously that's been what Tyron Parker has been playing for the last, 4 years or whatever of varsity football at Shawnee Heights, at least the last 3. So there is a little bit of a curve there. But again, I just have confidence that Maivella, first off, from a frame standpoint, doesn't need as much work maybe in the weight room as Tyron might need.
Sure.
I think he's shown a little bit more consistency in terms of staying healthy as well. And then I think if you give Maivella the time and the tutelage, I think he's going to pick it up rather quickly. And so again, I feel like they both have high ceilings, and you could probably make a case, and I think you're probably right, that Parker's ceiling could be higher. But I also feel like there's a chance that Tyron Parker could, end up not hitting pay dirt, whereas I feel a little bit better at Braden Maivella's chances of I guess not flaming out. I mean, that's a bad way to say it. That's a harsh way to put it. but I feel a little bit more confident that you can do and find something with Braden Maivela if you just give it a little bit of time. And they're both going to need time. Don't make no mistake about it.
Well, the other thing, too, is Maivela is a guy that when we talked to some college coaches, thought he could stick at quarterback depending on the system. And so he has multiple lanes to success as well. He was my number 11 and was just barely out. So, I mean, I don't want it to be like I was down on Braden Maivela. I was really high on him as well. And did you have Parker at number 11?
I was just about to say, before we get into what the industry says, right? I wanted to know, first off, of the 10 that we're in, right? That ended up making our consensus, was there one of those guys that you felt like was just harder than others to place? Because for me, it was the lineman.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about Tyron Parker. And about Braden Maivela, that was obviously, two that I juggled back and forth. But for me, the linemen were hard because I thought you said it correctly. LaMarcus and Caden in some order felt like they supplanted where we had Braden Wilmus for a very, very long time. Let's just be frank, they felt like as seniors, they outperformed Braden. Braden was tough for me. I didn't think he played poorly as a senior, but I didn't feel like he took the next step that I was looking for. And in saying that, I might have struggled even more with Max Robinson than I did.
Yeah, that would be my number one hardest guy to rank. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for me with Max, again, you correctly put it on, some of the things that he's kind of struggling with just in terms of the stature. For those that don't know, like, Dad is a very large individual. Like, there's still a chance that the growth plates are open and Max Robinson shoots up to 6'4", 6'5". Probably not. Maybe there's another inch there, but I went back and forth. I know that there were moments, again, like against some Manhattans and some Hayeses, that, he wasn't as strong, but the strong moments were really strong. Yeah. And he's still very technically gifted. I think athletically he's gifted. Again, you put all the technical fundamental stuff in a box, he's got it, right? Like, he's probably got it even more than Braden Wilmus. But at the end of the day, there's still the height going on there. There's going to be a transition for him in the weight room, like you said, stacking more weight on. I wanted to see him maybe take a little bit more leadership role this year with Derby. I mean, they stuttered a little bit out of the gates. I know they finished strong. But, you'd like to see Max, rise up to the occasion a little bit more in some areas like that. So interesting to see what happens. I think he could go to Georgia State, blow up, hit the portal, and be a coveted guy, just like he was 2-3 years ago when we thought he might be the number one kid in this class. I could also see him maybe going to Georgia State and struggling a little bit. It will be interesting to see how that all unfolds for Max Robinson. But again, I think technically it's all there. But for me, Kevin, and I want to hear kind of from you, he just proved himself to be too technically good to not be a top 10 member.
Yeah, I agree. I think the weight for me is the big issue, and that's why we keep listing the height. It's not necessarily, hey, he's too short to be good. It's, hey, if you want your interior offensive lineman to be 305 pounds, well, that's about 40 pounds away from what Max is right now as we sit here today. And so does he have the room to add that and be quality weight and not lose a lot of what makes him really good? Because he's quick off the ball, Ryan. He is a good athlete. He is good technically. He is nasty. And if he's able to add that quality weight, if he's able to be a guy that, hey, he's 6'3", 305 at the next level, or grows, like you said, and he's 6'4", 310, he's absolutely good enough to play just about anywhere in the country. Like, he is that good at what he does. It's just a question of whether or not he's going to be able to get there naturally and easily and keep all of the things that make him a really good player. I do want to talk to you here after we talk about the recruiting services about a few guys that just missed our list. So I did want to talk a little bit.
I was going to say, I think we'll know a couple here.
Yeah.
When we see what the other guys did.
For sure. But let's go ahead and bring up the recruiting services and see where they match up with the KCSN consensus. You can see the KCSN consensus there on the left. We've been talking about it. 24/7 Sports, just to run through it really quickly for those of you listening and not watching. Premer, Dunnigan, Snyder, Robinson, Max Robinson being up higher than either of the other two sites. Lawson McGraw at number 5, which is the highest for Lawson McGraw. You have Hunter Higgins at 6, Josh Galbraith at 7, Braden Wilmus at 8. John Michael Fountain is at 9. 24/7 Sports is the only one of the three that has him in its top 10 currently. And Pratt, tight end, Arlie Morrell at number 10. Rivals has Premer, Dunnigan, Snyder, same as us and 24/7 Sports. Arlie Morrell all the way up at number 4. LaMarcus Barber at 5. Jalen Mason at number 6. Hunter Higgins at 7. Braden Wilmus at 8. Nate Sims at number 9. And then Tyron Parker at number 10.
And I want to say, Kevin, that these were pulled. These are the top 24/7 and just Rivals. So these are not the 24/7 composite and the on 3 composite. This is specifically what does Rivals have? What does 24/7 say?
Yeah, and I get some of the decisions that were made here. I certainly think that John Michael Fountain on his best day is a really talented player. There's no doubt about that. We've talked about Lawson McGraw and how both of us saw that he could have been higher. How Max Robinson's tape, is something that would have him, potentially higher in the rankings. I think when you look at Rivals rankings, Jalen Mason being up, obviously Arlie Morrell being at 4 stands out. Jalen Mason being up at 6. We really like Jalen Mason. I'm sure we're going to talk Jalen Mason here in a minute. Being at 6 is significantly higher. I don't think the others had him in the top 10. He's different there. Nate Sims is a guy that's going to trip Rivals trigger, for lack of a better way to say it, because he's got good track times, right? Like, he's a decent sized kid who's an explosive athlete, and those verified athletic measurements are things that they really look at it. And so him slipping in at 9 makes a lot of sense from that standpoint.
Well, and again, I think you're going to see both of the industry rankings shift here. They still have, I think, 1, if not 2 more re-rankings coming. I would imagine John Michael Fountain will drop out from 24/7 Sports. Maybe Nate Sims drops out from Rivals and on 3. But yeah, they still have some time and some updates still to come. Ours is concrete. This is the finished product for us. What you see there. Let's just start with the one name that the industry has on both that we do not, and that's Arlie Morrell, because you kind of teased it just a minute ago. Who is outside of our rankings that, could have, should have maybe been there? Arlie was right there for me. Again, I talked about Bray Maivella and Tyron Parker. Ultimately, truth be told, I think I had Arlie ahead of Tyron when it was all said and done. It was more, is Arlie going to get my 10 spot, or is it going to be Maivella? Kevin, for me, it's nothing against Arlie Morrell. I just feel like that the transition that you're going to have to make coming from Pratt, again, it's just the reality. I hate to sound like you're hating on the small school kids. We've seen it done before. Not saying it can't be done. There's definitely going to be a transition. And getting up to Iowa State, how quickly does he get entrenched there? The coaching change, is that trip or cause any more of a greater hurdle for him? I don't know. There are just a lot of unknowns for me with Arlie Morrell. I think the ceiling is incredibly high, but again, I feel like, the floor, it just, I would have been safer, right, if he was playing at a little bit higher level, if I had seen him go against some of these other guys in a one-on-one type of scenario. We just didn't get a chance to see that. Athletically, he checks all the boxes, but for me, it was just right outside the top 10 for me.
He was number 12 for me. Like you said, just outside. In some iterations of my rankings when I was going through, he was in. Ultimately, he wound up out, but he was certainly in that discussion. I'll ask you this too, Ryan. Arlie Morrell's head coach just went to Penn State. And we've seen some Iowa State players start to reopen their recruitments. I don't know if you noticed, Kansas State has a new head football coach right now. If Arlie Morrell were to reopen his recruitment and you were a certain former Wildcat quarterback, now Kansas State head coach, is Arlie Morrell somebody that you would kick the tires on?
If I was K-State, if I was KU, I would be kicking the tires on Arlie Morrell. Look, I think, there will be questions about the Colin Klein offense and how kind of multiple they'll be in terms of tight end. I don't think they will have near the desire to get as many involved as we saw under Matt Wells and, Connor Riley. Wells was still kind of involved, I think, in some of that strategy, even when Riles was calling some plays, but you're still going to have multiple formations, right? With multiple tight ends. And Colin has shown that if you give him a Ben Sinnott, he'll use the hell out of them. So the tight end's not going to go away. You also wonder a little bit too, and I'm going, branching way off this, but at A&M, did Colin not use a lot of tight ends because at A&M you're gifted with a lot more playmakers at receiver?
Yeah.
Maybe the tight end does become a little bit more of a necessity at a place like Kansas State, especially if you can get a Lincoln Kieran and Arlie Morrell out there or Lawson McGraw out there. Hopefully I don't have to see that. I'd like to see him on defense. Nod, nod, wink, wink. Please do it. But no, I would definitely take a stab at Arlie Morrell. And here's the thing. That's just it. I think at both K-State and KU, I talked about with Arlie, it's going to take time. There's going to need to be patience. At the end of the day, could he be the guy that we're looking back at this list, kicking ourselves should have put him in the top 10? Absolutely. He has that upper level to him. But again, he's going to need some patience. And the beauty with a K-State and a KU is I feel like probably more so at K-State, and you can speak to KU, you've got a Lincoln Kira that's now a year older. You've got a Garrett Oakley that, again, as we record this, these guys are returning, right? Will Ancio's coming back. And they now have a little bit more of a need with, Andrew Metzger on the outs and Braden Lofton on the outs. Will Swanson, we already knew was departing. It would make sense to me that if Arlie Morrell, if the word gets out that maybe he's on the fence about Iowa State, why not take a shot?
Yeah, Kansas is in an interesting spot too with Jaden Ham transferring, because I think Kansas is probably going to look in the portal for a tight end anyway. And now with Jaden Ham gone, you kind of have a decision to make, right? Do you take another high school tight end if an Arlie Morrell is out there? I'm not saying take a high school tight end just for the heck of it. If you think he's good enough, you now have a spot for a young tight end to kind of develop in there, because you're going to have Leighton Kier this year. You're going to have another year of Carson Brune. You're going to have insert transfer portal tight end, here. Could that maybe, open up a spot for somebody like an Arlie Morrell? I think probably they would go into the portal for two tight ends rather than just one with Jaden Ham going, but you at least have that discussion now or that talking point, and I think he's good enough. We've talked about this before. I think he's absolutely a Big 12 caliber tight end prospect, and so it all comes down to how you want to spend those spots. A few other guys, Ottawa's Nate Sims, we've talked about a little bit. He was a guy I think both of us thought could have a really big senior year, worked hard all offseason, put on a lot of bulk for Nate, but then unfortunately had the early season ending injury. We both really liked Wichita Northwest quarterback Jalen Mason. He's going to Kansas as well, but I think we felt like he was kind of outside of that top 10 as well. One guy I did want to ask you about, because you mentioned him specifically when we were kind of talking about our rankings, because, just to kind of let everybody in, we didn't just look at the guys who were on our list and add another guy or two. We were going back and looking through tape of all kinds of guys to see, did this guy surprise? Did this guy maybe take a step that I didn't notice? So on and so forth. And a guy that you mentioned going back to was Hutchinson's Robert Hunter.
I went back and watched Robert. Obviously, a lot of quarterback tape. But yeah, just a special player. I do think he found the right landing spot in terms of the FCS level. But man, athletically, he's really gifted. So yeah, I wanted to go back and check that tape. I went back and watched Sire Padilla and the senior season that he had at Gardner. I think Pitt State got a good one. But again, probably not elite level kind of breakaway speed bursts sometimes that you would want to see if you're thinking about a top 10 level player to knock out some of these other guys. So yeah, that was one. And I wanted to go back to Nate Sims because it's just a shame, like from a ranking standpoint, not only with us, but probably with the industry, that people are going to want to go and watch a little bit more tape than it's going to be there. I think he had a chance to really kind of separate himself and prove himself a little bit this year, because for me right now, and again, without having more on him, I look at him like I did Bryce Cahoon. Like, I feel like there are some things that he does really strong in terms of the vertical game. Obviously, as a track guy, he can burn, but I wanted to see like more of the route tree, right? I wanted to see the physicality, knowing that he had, bulked up with his body, and we just didn't get a chance to. And so unfortunately, without seeing more, he fell out of the top 10 for me. Drake DeBon, hell, I was popping on Stephen Carroll tape. Like we were going, I was digging deep. Just, is there anybody out there maybe outside the top 10? Because again, folks, that's the beauty of this show, is Kevin and I don't give a damn where the kids are going. We're not only looking at like, well, he doesn't have a Power 4 offer, so I'm not going to rank it. He can't be a top 10 player for us. Hell no. Like Max Robinson's going to Georgia State, and we still feel like he's a top 10 level player on his best day. And he's got that potential. So we were digging deep. I was going through everything, and ultimately I don't feel great. Like I landed where I landed, Kevin, but I want to hear your thoughts on this, because ultimately I still am looking at it like, this could be here and this could be here, but because I can't remember where it was, maybe outside of the top 5, maybe 6, I feel like 6 or 7 to like 15, you could talk me into a number of different orders. So I don't feel great about the top 10, but ultimately that was the one that I felt the least apprehensive about.
The one who jumped out to me that missed that was Cape and Mount Carmel's Nick Ancio. Obviously he's got really good bloodlines. Brother Will is playing at K-State, but Nick showed some really good movement skills as an offensive tackle. James Tabor working with him down there on his strength and getting him to bulk up. 6'6", 275 right now.
Yeah.
Which is obviously significantly bigger than he was before. He's only going to get bigger and stronger, and I like the agility. I like the way that he moved and was able to stay attached to smaller defenders and a lot of those things. He didn't quite have, the physical pop that you see from some of the other guys, where it's like, hey, I put my hands on this guy and he's just destroyed.
Same.
But I think that that's going to come along with that added weight, with the added strength and all of those things. He was a guy that I really liked the way that he moved there. I'm glad you brought up Padilla, because Padilla to me he's a glider. Like, I like the top end speed. It takes him a little while to get there. He doesn't put his foot in the ground and just explode the way that you like to see for a Big 12-ish level back. But I think he falls into this group, and I'm interested to hear what you think about this. I think when we look back at this class 3 years from now, 4 years from now, we're going to see more depth than we realize, because I think that several of these guys are going to go to a level and they're going to transfer up. And I think Nick Ancio, who's currently committed to Tulsa, I believe, is one of those guys. I think Sire Padilla could be one of those guys. We like the weights and conditioning program at Pitt State. If he gets a little bit more explosion, he could be one of those guys that just has monster years and is somebody that could potentially transfer up. And so I'm interested to hear what you think about that, because I know people have kind of bounced around with this class of, it's stronger than people say. Maybe it's not as strong. Maybe it's not as deep as some other groups. I think the depth is something that we maybe aren't going to see for 3 or 4 years, because I think we're going to have some of these guys, whether it's, Ancio, whether it's Cal Purvis or some of these other guys, getting chances and then potentially transferring up later on.
I'm glad you brought up Cal Purvis, because the best way that I think you nailed it. I think we're going to look back at this class, and I have a hunch that we're going to see several of the big name guys that made our top 10 are not going to work out. And I'm not going to, I shouldn't say they're not going to work out in the entirety of their career. Their first destination is not going to happen. But where I think this class, again, years from now, we're going to go, that wasn't that bad, is because I think the guys that didn't make our top 10 are going to be some of the ones that are going to bounce up. And we're going to go, oh, yeah, that kid ended up hitting the ceiling we thought he could. We were a little bit tentative on it, but he hit it. You mentioned a guy like Cal Purvis, Nick Ancio. Hell, maybe it's even Brody Litton.
Davier McCray. We've talked
Davier
about
McCray.
This is a Big 12 level athlete that is not getting recruited at a Big 12 level.
Tons of kids like that I feel like that is where we're going to go back, in the coming years and go, yeah, maybe the big guys didn't pan out quite the way that the industry thought that they might, but you look down and you're going to go, yeah, but K-State, KU, Missouri, Iowa State, like where were they on all these guys the first time around? Like now they're coming up, but the first time around, they could have had it. But yeah, overall, proud of where we ended up. I think it took us a minute. Like I said, we had to shift on this one a lot more than we did last year. Last year it was, again, maybe figuring out 8, 9. And this year, again, we saw Caden Snyder go from out of our top 10 to 9 to 4 or 3. Like there was some definite changes that had to be made. But again, a lot of guys from areas that it took us a little bit while to get out to see them, to put our stamp and feel confident about where they are. But man, I feel really good about, again, how patient we were, and especially where we are. Not to hammer home the K-State guy here, but can we just talk about how good we feel and how wrong right now the industry is on LaMarcus Barber?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at 24/7 and they have him 15th, Kevin.
Yeah.
15th. And I know that there are changes coming. Rivals and On3 at least have him at 5, thank God. But there are a lot of guys here that I feel like we did our due diligence. We stayed a little bit more patient on, and hopefully that rounds into a little bit more accurate ranking for years to come.
Well, even Caden, I feel like we were probably right to have him where we did before. When we saw him at K-State camp, he was in the 230s from a combination of basketball and illness. And so, yeah, he's going to look mobile on tape when he's in the 230s, right? And then he started playing this season at 305, he told me. So, I mean, I felt like Caden, we moved him up when he showed the things that we wanted him to show it. And that's a credit to that kid working that hard to put himself in that position. But the other thing, Ryan, and I'm not trying to rip on anybody else or the recruiting services, we have some of those guys on our show and we enjoy it when they come on. We're seeing these guys in person, and we're going through the legwork of talking to coaches, talking to people who play against them, and really going through the legwork, I think, at a level that other people really aren't right now.
Well, and they can't. A lot of them don't live here, right? Like it's not that, it's a tough job. I don't like rankings. It's a tough job to do. You're going to get steamrolled one way or the other because there's going to be one kid that they think is better or whatever. It's a lose-lose kind of thing. But again, I feel good about the effort that we're putting into it, and hopefully the viewers come to us because of the effort that we're putting into it, that we're afforded as guys that are not only living here, but willing to put in the gas mileage and everything to get out there. Speaking of, if you know anybody that, might be interested in sponsoring us for some gas money or whatever, come on, we're happy to have it in our pockets. It would do the gas tanks well.
We'll stick around next week when we'll be doing the same rankings process for KC Mo. I'm fascinated. I don't know how that one's going to shape out, because I think that's another one where past a certain spot in the rankings, I think your rankings could really surprise me. Mine could really surprise you, or we could wind up with all the same. I honestly have no idea what that's going to be.
That one could get dicey. We thought Kansas was tough. That one might get dicey.
This has been the Verbal Commitment Podcast on KCSN. Thanks to all of you for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw or heard, leave us a comment or review. Like this video, subscribe here on YouTube, or hit us with a 5-star rating if you're listening on an audio platform. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.